stuff in the bottom. With the Kimura grip, obviously. We are gonna keep going with the themes we've been working. It's all gonna link together pretty well, but it's gonna be a different kind of a setup. I really like this setup a lot. Okay. So you guys are gonna be going for an over/under pass here, right? So usually I'll start to play half guard. I'll be a little bit loose, and then Foz guys in the position. Boom. He's trying to put his head here. And he's hugging here. Usually he's going to hug my belt, which is fantastic. If you can't get my belt, he'll hug the lapel. Usually on the same side. If he reaches a little too far over, I think it's a little bit easier to defend. But either way, he's locking his hand down here, he's locking his head here, and he's stuffing the hand through, right? And you've all seen, you can look for the Kimura here, but it's a hard game to play. When you grab the Kimura like that, the guy can shut it down really easy. And Foz is just looking to finish by clearing. Boom, stuffing. See how heavy he is here? Ugh, oh my guts. Bad position for me. Okay. Best thing for me to do is get here early, so when he stuffs that leg through and he dives under, I know what he's doing. I know he wants to put his head here. I want to push his head to the other side, right? But if I just try to do like this, sometimes it's not going to work. He's just going to learn, you know? So I got to use my own mind. So I have two tricks. Okay, the first one, I'm just going to use my body inside of my leg, hip up, and push his head over to the other side. That works extremely well, right? Clark Gracie Sunday showed this variation where I'm here. I slide my hand under, and I'm going to grab the collar. I can just grab it like this, but I'm just going to keep him. That's going to free up this hand, okay? So I'd like for you guys just to experiment with this. I think the other way works fantastic. It's worked for a long time for me. You'll see guys like Gary Yoshida use this technique. Man, it's so sneaky. The first time you have this done to you, you're like, how did I end up here, you know? And sometimes I would end up in this position. I wouldn't know how I got there. No idea. And that's why I like this. And that stack was Carlson Gracie black belt, the gal, but you know, Carlson Gracie lineage black belt. But I'm lifting up, putting my hand underneath, and I'm just going to lock in like I'm finishing a collar choke, right? Okay. Collar chokes are things where you choke the person using a collar. We'll talk about that one day, probably with somebody else. This hand's free, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cup his armpit, and I'm going to move this leg out. And this is the cool part. I'm going to open my leg, use just this part. You know, I'm not just going to kind of do this. I'm going to go here and then kick. And as I do that, I'm going to bring Foz to the ground. Now I've got his leg, his arm trapped right here. Right? Some of you guys are starting to light up. Right? So I'm going to start to come up. Look what happens. Remember the catching the trail arm, right? I've already got Foz putting his arm on the ground right here. So I just need to keep him from building his base up too much. Okay? From here, I'm just going to go one-on-one and come forward. Right? I'm not always going to be able to pull it back like that, but I've got a one-on-one right here. This is just like having a Kimura grip. In fact, if you want just to see how it works, go ahead and grab the Kimura grip, right? It's right here. From here, I'm going to pull my leg out from between his legs, so I usually lean forward to do it, hook his arm, and then I'll trade to the back arm. Okay? It's not absolutely imperative that you trade to the back arm. If you're doing it the way I like to do it, this is always better. But David Jacobs showed some variations that were very nice. We're holding on with the front arm, right? So if you're built like a troll, maybe do it the way Rock does it. But I'll tell you, when I roll this way, I really like it because what I can do is now I can roll forward by putting this foot on the ground, and I can jump, right? So I'm going to jump over Foz's arm here. And right away, I'm just going to start looking for the rear naked choke here. I'd like to get my elbow underneath his chin, latching on, putting my elbow nice and easy. It's going to be pretty nasty, okay? So I'll do this to Danny too. I don't know what your neck rests on.
Thanks, man.
Figure that was for the best. This is like, you got to push the guy's head a little bit when you're doing this too, right? So we're here. I got a little lazy, and Danny's like, okay, well, I'm stuffing this through. Again, you could look for this, and sometimes this counter works, okay? It's a dangerous game to play, though. I don't always recommend it. I'll usually, if you see me doing this in here, I'm usually trying, experimenting. This isn't my go-to, or I was really late on what I meant to do. So I'd like to get his head over here, bridging, holding, right? Now I can have this. Once I've got this locked into place, this acts like an anchor. I'm going to kick my leg this way and out here. And now Danny's head goes to the mat, build my base up, my leg came out. Sometimes when you land here, you're going to have the arm lock. You can just kind of straighten the arm out, okay? But sometimes he's going to be fighting, he's going to be moving his arm, catch it with the back leg, right? This comes up. It's important to note this is backwards from the way Marcelo Garcia does it. He's better than jiu-jitsu, better at me than jiu-jitsu, you know? Better than me at jiu-jitsu and talking and stuff. But this works for me with the techniques that I use with this one-on-one and the Kimura style grip, okay? So I'm gonna dive forward over this shoulder, bringing Danny with me with this leg, right? And right away from here, I'm moving his arm away, so I have access. Just slipping under, easy does it, grab, elbow closes, okay? What do you guys think? Pretty easy? Rudy, can I borrow you for this one too? So Rudy's stuffing this arm through, okay? Yep, pushing it through. I'm gonna be sure that I direct his head to the other side first. And if you go like this is the point that Clark kind of belabored. It's a little bit risky because right here, as soon as my pressure comes off the trade, Rudy will take his head and put it to the other side. He's back where he wants to be, and he's gone once he gets there, right? So in this movement, I'm going to try to go under if I possibly can, right? And just kind of stay connected. That's all. If you don't really do that part exactly right, the person's got to be really on the ball to do this, but if the person's really good with this pass, then they're going to be doing that, right? So now he can't get his head to the other side. It's pretty good from in here, right? Locking it in place, kicking this out, coming up. And notice I just barely freed anything over here, just enough to hip out. But his arm is trapped. It's in between my legs here. Boom, coming through here, one-on-one hook. Like catching the trail on, right? Almost the same. The only difference, I'm gonna feed this leg here. I could also try to finish the David Jacobs style arm lock. Doesn't work, boom, feed it. Here, here. Try to make sure you guys are both looking to your right, away from the direction you're rolling in, so you don't jack your partner's neck up. Right? Going through here, keeping the arm away. Nice and easy, locking it in place. I'm just grabbing over his shoulder and pinching my elbow together. Boom. Okay? Let's give it a shot, guys, okay? Spin it.